What makes a strong character? There are nearly countless attributes we associate with strength. Integrity, resilience, and courage, just to name a few. Strength can refer to physical ability or the presence of a reliable moral compass. If one had to describe what it means to be a strong person, or how to write one, I think the key would be self-mastery. The exercise of mind over matter. The ability to control one's physical and emotional impulses for the greater good. And yet, in modern storytelling, strength seems to be a shallow imitation of this concept, and when it comes to strong female characters, a parody. Captain Marvel, Star Wars, Rings of Power, Damsel, and even Dune. All of these films feature female leads who are weak. At the same time, Marvel is publishing articles about how it's lost its core male audience, and even decently well-written stories like Ballerina, Furiosa, and Arcane are being written off as the latest edition of mindless feminist messaging. So, how did we get here? And how do we get out? Or are these problems really the fault of some inaccessible group of angry fanboys unwilling to share their favorite franchise with the opposite sex? Well, in looking at some of the more recent examples of good female characters, I think we can find an answer. Because strength is not a result of power taken, but of power earned. One of the greatest examples of the strong female stereotype can be seen in the character of Rey, the protagonist of the most recent Star Wars trilogy, episodes 7, 8, and 9. And whether you call her a Mary Sue or just plain boring, she is a perfect representation of this false strength. But in an effort to analyze this issue in its entirety and prove that writing a strong female character is not some unattainable goal, I want to look at recent successes as well. Produced over the last 5 years, Andor is a Star Wars story filled with strong female characters. Ones who violated all the traditional conventions the supposedly racist and sexist fans love, and even managed to challenge my own Catholic moral views. And yet, Andor was wholeheartedly enjoyed by all. It was not an opinion piece, not one narrow-minded depiction of feminine strength. Rather, it featured a variety of women with different personalities, abilities, and interests, with different virtues and vices. Mon Mothma, the politician, a privileged idealist who does not yet know or understand the brutality of war, and yet desires to support it. Bix Caleen, the citizen, not a warrior or a politician, but a mechanic, tortured and brutalized by the Empire until she is practically forced to fight back. The embodiment of the backlash of tyranny. And lastly, my personal favorite, Clea Marka, the morally complex pseudo-daughter of Luthen Rael, the mind behind many of the greatest missions of the rebellion, and the mistress of chaotic good. All three of these are recent examples of strong female characters. They are neither imitations nor parodies of their male counterparts, but characters with their own stories and triumphs and failures. So, let's go back to Rey. As I've said many times now, Star Wars is a fairy tale. And in traditional fairy tales and myths, it's not uncommon to have an overqualified protagonist. A character gifted with superhuman abilities on whose shoulder the conflict and eventual resolution can rest. But traditionally, the protagonist has at least one fatal flaw. And with Rey, well, let me just show you. In just the first film, here is a list of what Rey manages to accomplish. Rey is a competent scavenger. Rey is empathetic to the plight of a random BB-8 droid. Rey is noble enough to want to help BB-8 reach the Resistance. Rey is strong enough to defeat several armed stormtroopers with a stick. Rey is talented enough to fly a spaceship she's never seen before. Rey is brave enough to fight against the First Order, even though she has no real reason to be loyal to the Resistance. Rey is a crackshot with a blaster. Rey is powerful enough to resist a fully trained Force wielder's attempts to read her mind, while simultaneously being able to read his. Rey is formidable enough to perform Jedi mind tricks, and Rey is dominant enough to defeat a fully trained Force wielder in a lightsaber duel. From a narrative perspective, Rey's supreme power destroys all narrative suspense. By the time we get to the final duel of the trilogy, the anticipatory tension surrounding Rey versus Kylo Ren is completely non-existent. By that time, Rey has defeated Kylo not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. In addition to saving his life and resisting his call to the dark side. In fact, there is not a single character in the entire sequel trilogy who comes even close to challenging Rey's power, except maybe Palpatine, who threatens to possess her if she kills him, although strangely that logic does not seem to hold up just minutes later. This is not about plotting versus pantsing. I'm not talking about creators having an ending in mind or even a moral theme they want to portray, but about their insistence on making a statement so definitive that it interferes with the living, breathing, organic aspect of story creation. Though people try to deny it, it's clear Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm had an agenda, a part of which was the gaining and retaining of a more female-centric audience. Throughout the years, Kennedy has spoken about this agenda, saying that increased female representation was an absolute priority, that there's nothing we'd like to see more than a female director for Star Wars, and that this character of Rey is one of the most wonderful heroines to come along in movie history. Girls are going to have their own Luke Skywalker now. And that is the primary issue. Rey and many of these proposed strong female characters are not designed as characters in their own right, but as reactions to male counterparts, which is not only unoriginal, but seems to ignore the inherent differences between men and women. So instead of being their own characters, Rey is very similar to Luke, but stronger. And this trend is not in isolation. It can be traced across sci-fi and fantasy media. Instead of male and female characters complementing one another, they're competing. Indiana Jones is regressed to a lonely drunk old man to make way for Helena Shaw. Mjolnir abandons Thor to join Jane Foster. Ironheart belittles the accomplishments of Iron Man only to replace him. The training between Bruce and She-Hulk is primarily filled with scenes of She-Hulk defeating Bruce, despite the fact that she's really never had these abilities or powers. And Shuri takes every opportunity to criticize the work of people like Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. And just when you think you're safe, there's Rings of Power, which just released its 2nd season last year. Galadriel is probably the best, most recent example of a falsely strong female character. But who exactly is this character in the first place? And what is Rings of Power reacting to?
The world is changed.
Galadriel from The Lord of the Rings was not only universally beloved by fans, but arguably one of the most important and powerful characters across the 3 films and books. In the original trilogy, she is the pinnacle of graceful feminine beauty and the voice of enlightenment. Although often quiet and soft-spoken, Galadriel possesses immense power. She never draws her swords or engages directly against the foes of Mordor, and yet, with a single conversation, brings an army of elves to the gates of Helm's Deep. She does not lead the armies to the Black Gate, but serves as a steward for the entire Fellowship. And her gifts aid the Fellowship in profound ways throughout the entire trilogy. The leaf clasps aid in saving Merry and Pippin from the capture of the Uruk-hai. The crystal phial acts as both a metaphorical and literal light in the darkness for Frodo in his time of need. And the Lembas Waybread keeps the Fellowship alive and sustained throughout their entire journey. She even aids Boromir with a simple word of wisdom.
I heard her voice inside my head. She spoke of my father and the fall of Gondor. And she said to me, even now there is hope left.
A sentiment which leads to a conversation between Boromir and Aragorn that cements their friendship as brothers of Gondor, and perhaps even leads Boromir to his noble end. It's a subtle demonstration of Galadriel's power. She wields the ability to predict and prescribe the necessary tools for each and every member of the Fellowship, without the need for recognition or glory. She is a living embodiment of grace amidst a weary world. And her temptation at the mirror of Galadriel hints at what inner demons she has had to overcome to become this woman.
They were all very interested in, which I found really exciting, the fact that in order to become a force for good or positive strength, you have to have confronted the darkness within. Yeah. They were interested in the small way, you know, the bit that I'm in, teasing apart the idea of the darkness that could have been unleashed in her, that she too has been tempted by the ring.
We see an offer of unlimited power, her magic and her true ambition revealed, and despite all of this, we see her self-discipline. True female strength. But despite this incredible template for Galadriel's character, Rings of Power decided to take her an entirely different direction. Galadriel bears no resemblance to her counterpart. She's angry.
But you have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I have seen.
Loud.
There is a tempest in me.
And brash.
Permitted to make such a journey on an elf's behalf.
It is because of the elves that you were given this island. What? Surely you can spare a few planks and a rudder.
And spends more time posing with her sword than she does exhibiting wisdom or grace. Now, surprisingly, this adaptation is not entirely in conflict with the Silmarillion, the source material the Rings of Power is loosely based off of, at least superficially. In the text, Galadriel is called Nirwen, Man-Maiden. She was strong of body, mind, and will, a match for both the lore masters and the athletes of the Eldar in the days of their youth. She was proud, strong, and self-willed, as were all the descendants of Finwë save Finarfin. Tolkien himself depicts her as a fiery warrior, general, and princess who leads legions of elves across the Great Western Sea to defeat Sauron, before eventually putting aside the sword for more peaceful diplomacy. But that's not what is shown in the series. Rings of Power is, once again, a reaction, as opposed to an adaptation. See, Galadriel really has only one character trait: strength. Whether it's when she's trying to swim across a literal ocean, or when she's saying that she's right about Sauron.
Seeing a sigil does not mean you're any closer to finding Sauron. It is over. The evil is gone.
Then why is it not gone from in here?
After all you have endured, it is only natural to feel conflicted.
Conflicted?
Or when she discovers she's wrong about Sauron.
And what frailty blinded you, Elrond?
Not Dune.
What other path did your failure, Khazad-dûm, leave us with but this?
You were my friend!
Dune!
But what's missing in this story is depth. Even if she is meant to be obsessed with revenge, human emotions are not so simple. But this desire would be wrapped in nuance. It would be affected by her childhood, by her past and present moral philosophies, by the depth of her relationship with her brother. Instead, she is simply self-righteous and singularly driven, gifted with all the superficial qualities of a traditional hero, but without the depth. And since her development into that driven commander and warrior happened off-screen, the result is that her character is stale, entirely unfit for the role and responsibilities she is given throughout the story.
Daughter of the Golden House of Finarfin, commander of the northern armies of High King Gil-galad.
And, ultimately, weak, even if she is superficially strong. The irony of the entire strong female archetype is that, putting aside online hype, they are actually pretty awful characters. So much time is devoted to them showing up their male counterparts, and little is devoted to developing their motivations. And the creators' desperation to depict their female leads as powerful ends up making them look weak. Insecure characters, so defensive and unsure of themselves that they must continually remind the audience of their supposed strength. Because if strength is best defined by self-mastery, it makes sense that it should manifest in many different ways across both sexes. And of course, the differences would be more obvious when comparing men and women directly. Men and women are different. Masculine and feminine strength is different. And I'm not talking about homemaking versus breadwinning, but about the different ways men and women see the world and react to it. As my good friend and YouTuber Master Samwise once said, 2 different instruments playing the same note will sound quite different. So perhaps it's best we leave it that way. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because as much as we like strong characters, it seems the greatest heroes have a slightly different trait.
What is it they've sent us?
Hope.